Hey there, professor, look what I brought. Now tell me what's my rock. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special edition of What's My Rock. Today's guest is our co-host, Dylan. So it's not really a guest, it's a guest-free show. We're just going to talk about some rocks that he's got. And Dylan, what do you got?
So I got some rocks from doing a trade with a fella up in Laurentian University, Tobias Raw. And I sent him some rocks to help him with some educational content. And in return, he has sent me some beautiful sulfide samples along with some shatter cones is what he has said. I want to, verify and kind of see what's more on this story. Like, how does this really lay into the story of the geology of that area? So,
Okay. Yeah, well, so this is the Sudbury Deposit
correct.
up in the counter-revolutionary country to the north, we call
Mhm.
Canada. And that's a very famous deposit. It has massive sulfide deposits. What do you know about the formation of it?
From what I know, it was an impact billion or 2 years ago. So quite a distance in the past, and it was a very violent event. So there was a lot of energy released to it, which would create like the shatter cones. But also the meteorite was a source of material that is actually being mined. So, like, say, for example, nickel. So I know that Sudbury is a very famous nickel mining area, and I think that is associated with the impact event.
So let's look at the rocks for a second
Sure.
because, well, I want to look at this one. This is the one that he says has the nickel in it, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is, it's not a meteorite just because it has nickel in it, everyone. This is a mineral called pentlandite, which is an iron nickel sulfide mineral. We should take a step back.
Sure.
What happened? The meteorite hit and caused a giant melting event, right? And it melted the surrounding rock. Presumably the meteorite melted, I guess.
I would imagine.
I don't know if that's true, but there was a giant melting event. The surrounding rocks are a lot of, mostly, I believe up there would be Canadian shield rocks, which are going to be a lot of felsic rocks. There's some mafic rocks, mostly sort of igneous metamorphic type things, very, very, very old. And my understanding is that it hits, everything melts, creates this sort of flat magma chamber, think of it sort of like a layer of melt on the surface, but thick enough that the melt segregated. It unmixed like oil and water, and the sulfide-rich melt separated, sank to the bottom because it's denser, and the silicate part stayed on the top. And today, a lot of that silicate stuff on the top has eroded away, and we're just mining the bottom segregated sulfide fraction melt at the bottom. But what you're saying is there's a lot of nickel in this pentlandite mineral, and that nickel was contributed by the meteorite.
I believe so.
Okay.
Because you don't really see concentrations for ore quality of nickel much at the surface, because it usually is differentiated down to the core, I thought, by now.
Well, I mean, a lot of the nickel would come from just the surrounding mafic rocks and the ultramafic. There's a lot of komatiite, ultramafic material up there that was already there, and the ultramafic can have up to 2,000 ppm nickel or something like that. It can have a lot of nickel, maybe not quite that high, but it can be enriched in nickel.
Okay.
And the mafic rocks can even have a little bit of nickel. And the whole point is, if you have this giant impact event, you're melting everything. You're going to mix everything together, and all that nickel is going to come out in the sulfide. So I think that a lot of the nickel just came from the surrounding rocks. So I don't know. Some of it could have come from the meteorite, but that has to be a pretty big meteorite.
Yeah, it was a sizable event just because you can see it from satellite imagery, but at the same time, you can't do a one-to-one comparison on the size of that impact crater to the size of the impactor. So it'd be much smaller because it's traveling at a tremendous speed. So yeah,
I think there's probably some papers that have calculated the source of the nickel and how much you'd have to have from a meteorite and how much you'd have to have from the surrounding rocks. So this is something that we could look up later, but yeah, we're not. We're just sort of talking here. So this is a sulfide. This is a pentlandite, and this is what he says.
Pentlandite and I think pyrrhotite.
And pyrrhotite, which is basically an iron sulfide. And then what's this stuff here?
This is chalcopyrite. So,
chalcopyrite. Okay, I always pronounce it chalcopyrite.
Chalcopyrite.
Yeah.
Potato, maybe. Or I could just be completely wrong.
That's okay.
So
We'll see internet.
see how much the comments rag on me for my pronunciations.
I'm on chalcopyrite team.
Okay.
This looks like chalcopyrite because it has the same kind of luster and sort of a bronzy color to it that you would expect from chalcopyrite. And there's even a little bit of sort of vague iridescence. But then again, this could be pyrite right there next to chalcopyrite. So it's not really clear. So, okay, so he says this is chalcopyrite. And what was the guy's name again?
Tobias Roth.
Okay, all right. I'm sure he's correct. The question is there anything else in there, right? Like what else is going on in there? I've seen a lot of sulfide deposits microscopically, and it's very common to get many different sulfide minerals that grow together. Maybe one of them is there's 90% chalcopyrite, but there's probably other stuff in there too.
Okay.
And it'd be interesting to see what else would be in there. So I think we should take these down to the scanning electron microscope and have a look.
I'd be down for that.
Sound good? Okay,
yeah.
So let's do that. Before we do that, let's have a look at these
shatter cones.
Shatter cones.
So here we go.
Yeah, these are really cool. So this looks like what kind of rock is this?
I suspect it might be like maybe a schist or something.
Yeah, it looks like a schist or some kind of a. The question though is it possible that the impact created these fractures that were parallel to the surface, sort of make it look like it was a schist? I mean, because it almost feels like, I swear this feels like a basalt. It's really, really hard. Let me see if I can scratch it. If it's a basalt, it should be unscratchable by this thing. Let me see. And look, gosh, it looks like I made a pretty clear mark on there. Let me see what it looks like. See if I can rub it away. Usually if you make a mark, you want to find out did you make a mark or did you rub off some of the metal file. The rock is actually pretty granular. Not what I'd expect for a basalt, unless it's like a metabasalt hornfels or something. But these scratches, they're real, but I think it's because it's granular. I'm sort of pushing aside the grains, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So this kind of looks like a sandstone, maybe a quartzite, really. Something in that family. If it's a basalt, there's no ground mass here. There's nothing that's a fine grain like a glass or anything with little crystals floating in it that I expect. So if it's a basalt, it would definitely be like a metamorphosed basalt, really fine grain, like maybe could be a shock metamorphosed basalt, right? Or a hornfels, something that had contact metamorphism, but I don't know. What do you think? Want to have a look?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Looking at it closely, I can definitely see that granular texture you're talking about there. On the microscopic level here, this does not quite look like some of the basalts that I've seen in the past. Maybe it looks like a very dark, like sandstone could be. This rock is definitely a big sign of an impact event just because of the big structure on it. So if it were a sandstone, I'd imagine it might be like shock metamorphosed a bit towards quartzite. Maybe not completely, going full scale quartzite, but I mean, maybe a lot more solid than a regular sandstone, if that were the case. So
yeah, it's usually quartzites, if I try to scratch them, they're really hard. You can't really do much with them. And the fact that you can kind of scratch and move some grains aside makes me kind of wonder if this is more of a sandstone or if it's a quartzite, it would be kind of a lower grade quartzite. But that's fine. Okay, but then let's look at these features right here, right?
So this, I would imagine, would probably be more in the geophysics realm, but I would imagine they might be associated with shock waves from the impact. That's what I'm kind of envisioning. And as I recall, with these being collected in the field, I thought I had heard that when you see them in the field, they line up in a way to point towards the direction
Hmm.
of the impact.
Hmm.
So there's an orientation aspect in the field that you can use to
Okay.
do that, and that might be part of the story of their formation. Then is that they form in that orientation because of the impact.
Right.
So.
And I mean, I think that, when you see a massive sulfide deposit, most of these in the world, they form through pure magmatic processes. This is very important evidence at Sudbury that it wasn't just plain
Mhm.
old boring magmatism, that it was
Mhm.
magmatism related to an impact.
Yeah.
And so this is the impact structure, evidence for an impact structure that was really critical to testing the hypothesis that it was an impact. So that's, to me, what the most important part of this thing is for. I mean,
And so
I've never been there, but
this is probably like further away from the impact, and then this is really close to the impact, where maybe the melt
yeah. Well,
occurred.
this comes from the molten part,
Mhm.
and this comes from the surrounding,
Surrounding
from
country
the
rock.
country rock. Exactly, country rock. It's not just a radio
There's-
format. Although I am from Jacksonville, which is the home of Leonard Skinner,
Oh,
who invented country rock, so southern rock. This whole thing won't fit in the SEM, so we're gonna have to like bang off a little
little piece.
portion of it. Is that okay to do that to your
I'm
babies
willing to
here?
sacrifice a
Okay.
little bit to the cause.
We don't need a lot. The smaller the better. So maybe like I'll let you pick. Although
Okay.
I'm thinking that little spot right there is
Yeah,
a
actually, I'm
good spot.
kind of inclined
And
for
then-
that.
All right, Dylan. Let's crack those rocks.
Okay. Got some rotten egg smell.
Yep.
There we go. Let's see.
There we go.
That was
All right, so this is our scanning electron microscope, and inside here is an electron beam that's going to zap whatever we put in there. It's going to be able to generate images, really high magnification images. And what's even cooler is that we can also zap minerals to get their chemical composition, just like we do with the X-ray fluorescent spectrometer with the XRF, but we're going to be able to do it microscopically on this instrument. So this is a really fun instrument to use, and it opens up a whole new world of stuff. So, I think on these, they're going to be pretty satisfying. So, all right, so first what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the machine, and I'm going to take out what we call the stage. So now we've got our pentlandite and our chalcopyrite sitting in there. Put it in the chamber, close it up. So now we're looking inside the machine, and we can see our two little friends that we just put in there. Again, over here, we've got our chalcopyrite. Here's our pentlandite. This is an optical view, which means we are looking at what it looks like with our real eyes. I'm going to click this button right there, and that's going to put us into scanning electron mode. So let's click that button. There we go. That's pretty.
wow, yeah.
I'm going to click the contrast. Notice this. Can you see the scale down there? It says 200 microns. There we go. Now it's 300 microns. So remember, a human hair is about 30 to 50 microns thick. So this is about the width of, say, 10 human hairs. Now, the important thing to understand is that as you go across and down the periodic table, the atomic number goes up. Things with a higher atomic number are going to be brighter. Things with a lower atomic number are going to be darker. If we see two things that look different, they're probably a different mineral because they have different atomic numbers. I'm going to click somewhere here that looks clean and relatively flat, and we're going to analyze the chemistry of that spot. So let's try this spot right down there.
Okay.
And let's see what we get. Sulfur.
Okay.
S for sulfur. Iron.
Iron.
You can see there's an iron peak right here. And there's a sulfur peak right there. And then this right there is our copper peak. The basic idea that we've seen copper, iron, and sulfur, and there's really one common mineral that's going to be, which is chalcopyrite. And also, your guy up in Canada already said it was chalcopyrite.
Pyrite, yeah.
So if he's watching this, he's be like, guys, I told you. Well, there's something really bright right there.
Yep.
Let's zoom in there, see what that is. It's this white stuff right there. There we go. Really bright. Ah, look at this.
Whoa.
A lot of lead.
Right there.
That's complicated. So we're getting big lead signal next to the sulfur signal. Iron, copper, and zinc. What do you think this is?
Man. Lead sulfur is galena. Zinc sulfide is sphalerite.
Yep.
And the iron sulfide would be pyrite, but then we got also copper, so it could also be chalcopyrite and such.
Yep.
So looks like we've got not just one sulfide potentially, but like a few different species of sulfide.
So how about we zoom in? Let's go look over here.
Okay.
So we're gonna zoom in pretty good on here. Look at that. Let's get a contrast on that.
Oh, wow.
Look how cool that looks. Look at all these
structure.
growth lines. Okay, now this is 50 microns. So a human hair is about that. So this is like 1, 2, maybe 4 human hairs wide, depending on how thin your hair is. Look at the cleavage on that. You see this is cleavage?
Yeah.
The cleavage lines right there?
Mm-hmm.
That looks like cubic cleavage, which means
galena has cubic cleavage.
correct. This is going to be a chunk of galena.
Okay.
And so let's try that spot right there. We're getting iron and copper, sulfur, and lead. Let's see, this looks like one mineral, so I think there could just be a mixture.
Mm-hmm.
Now the question is, can galena have copper and sulfur in it and still be galena? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
It could be a mixture that we're not able to resolve at this scale between galena and chalcopyrite. Because we definitely have iron, copper, lead, sulfur. Now the formula for galena is PbS, so 1 lead, 1 sulfur. So there's a lot more sulfur than we need for galena.
Mm-hmm.
The obvious thing is to say that it's got chalcopyrite and galena together. Let's zoom in even more. See, when I look there, you can see little blemishes.
Yeah.
And it looks like there's a little bit of, some heterogeneities. This is chalcopyrite up here,
Mm-hmm.
up in this area. But this stuff right here is definitely galena. I mean, it's cubic, right? Look at this. This is, that's cubic cleavage.
Right.
Let's try one more. And this looks pretty clean right there. I'm going to try right there. Let's see if we can get it to get more lead. No, it's still not doing that. So I think what this is telling us is that we have, there could be a solid solution between galena and chalcopyrite, but that's what we got here. So this is a little galena nodule mixed in with chalcopyrite, and it confuses me a little bit. So we might have just learned something about sulfide chemistry here. And this is cleavage, by the way. Those of students out there, you can see these little lines here. This is a line that's caused by breaking. That's a cleavage line. And notice how it's the same orientation as all the other lines that are going in that direction. There's cleavage going in this direction as well. And you can even see these are breaking off like layers. There's like a stair-step pattern, especially right in this area, right in here, right? This is a nice example of cleavage. So that's one thing I like about the SEM is that you can see cleavage really well. So. All right, well, there's that one. Why don't we zoom out? Let's go back over to the right, and let's zoom out, and let's go to the other blobs, and let's see what this looks like. Now, you would think that this is going to be galena chalcopyrite. Look at that. See, it's like, that's neat. The galena looks like it's growing. It's growing out of the chalcopyrite.
Even the chalcopyrite down here has some interesting structures.
Well, this is slightly brighter. This might not be chalcopyrite.
Oh.
So let's analyze. See how this is a little bit darker? That's probably going to be chalcopyrite. And that's what we got.
Yep.
In fact, this is a really good analysis. It's got a little bit of lead in it, so that's interesting. We'll stop that analysis. Now let's go on to this stuff right here, which is slightly brighter. Mm-hmm. Let's see if that's a different mineral. Aha, look at that. What's that?
Oh, that's sphalerite right there.
Yeah, so this is our sphalerite. Let's go look at the analysis. We've got a big thing of sulfur, nice peak for zinc there. We got iron, a little bit of iron and copper. And so there we go. We got a nice sphalerite signal, probably a little bit of copper and iron. That's probably a little bit of chalcopyrite in there. By the way, sphalerite has really exquisite cleavage. And you can see the cleavage in there. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit on that structure there. Yeah, you can really see all of this. This is cleavage in the sphalerite. That's pretty remarkable. All right, so that's pretty neat.
Cool.
So he didn't tell you it had galena and sphalerite in it. He just said
No.
chalcopyrite. So that's why we go to the SEM.
SEM.
So are we satisfied with this one? I think we
Yeah.
found little bits of galena, little bits of sphalerite. So we can call this a chalcopyrite galena sphalerite assemblage. Wait, there's something. Look at that darker thing right there.
Hmm.
Let's have a look at that. Ah, see now in here.
Looks like Nysic banding almost on the
Yeah.
microscopic level.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Oh wow.
That's pretty. There we go. This is probably going to be our sphalerite. This is a little bit darker.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just see what we get. Interesting. So this is showing iron and a lot of oxygen.
Hematite or magnetite?
Hematite or magnetite. Probably magnetite. I think the redox or the oxygen conditions of these is low enough that I think we're going to favor magnetite
Right. Mm-hmm.
over
hematite.
Over hematite. So this is probably magnetite. Let's just do a couple in this little frame right there. Let's do a couple more. So this is number 2 now up here. That's sphalerite.
So, right, yeah.
Zinc sulfide. To the next one, number 3, which is over here, which is our chalcopyrite. And then we'll skip to number 4, and this is the iron oxide. So just in this little zone right here, we've got sphalerite up there, and iron oxide here, chalcopyrite here. So we learned a lot from this one, huh? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go and stop this one, and let's move on to, let's go over here. We're going to move on to our other friend. Okay, so now we're looking at our pentlandite, and it doesn't look that different. Again, we're in a scanning electron microscope, so we're just looking at the surface. And so what we want to do, look, this already, there's more than one mineral in there because this is darker than this. And then let's do, first we're going to do the bright stuff. That's probably pentlandite. Right up here, number 1.
Okay.
And that's iron sulfide. So there's no nickel in that at all. So this isn't pentlandite at all. What is that?
That'd be pyrrhotite.
Yeah.
Could be
iron
that.
Pyrrhotite is Fe1-XS. FeS is a mineral called troilite, but that really only occurs in meteorites. I don't think they have that here. So I think this is probably going to be pyrrhotite. So now let's try this guy here.
Okay.
This dark stuff. Ah, look at this.
Wow.
What is this?
A bit more of a smorgasbord.
Yeah,
of stuff,
it's a bit of a pig's breakfast, but there's an important element in there that gives us a clue.
Lots of oxygen there. And second place, silicon. So
Silicon, that's right.
you got some magnesium in there.
That's
so more towards the mafic side of the Bones reaction series would be like, say, like a olivines, which has magnesium in it.
Yeah,
but also
it doesn't have aluminum and calcium. And it's got that
Yeah.
sodium in it. Sometimes you can get amphiboles that have sodium and calcium in them.
Well, you could get that with, like, say, a plagioclase, I guess.
Yeah, but that's not going to explain the magnesium.
Magnesium.
So the first thing to say is because of all the silicon, this is a silicate material for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and knowing the area, knowing it's high in nickel, nickel is high in mafic and ultramafic rocks. So this is going to be some sort of a, as you said, high up on Bowen's reaction series. It's not going to be olivine because there's
aluminum
in there, and olivine's not going to have enough aluminum. Also, the calcium is in there. So it's some sort of a sodium, calcium, iron, magnesium, aluminum silicate, which is probably, I think the best, most likely for that is going to be some kind of amphibole, actually. Let's zoom in a little bit over here. This definitely has cleavage in there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at that right there. Whoa. That's some nice cleavage in there. Nobody make a joke. Beautiful, straight cleavage. Let's go up in this area right there. There we go. Oh, there's some interesting stuff here. Let's zoom in. This is a mess in here. Look at this. Holy moly. And let's start with this big face right here. What do we get there? Haha, what do you think this is?
Pure silicon and oxygen would be like a quartz,
Yeah.
like a little quartz grain.
Let's try this material over here. This stuff here.
Right there.
So this, again, this is that same stuff. This is that sodium, calcium, iron, magnesium, aluminum silicate. Probably an amphibole. And let's try this stuff right here, the bright stuff, which is probably going to be our iron sulfide. Ah, there we go.
There we go. I was wondering when nickel was going to show up.
Yep. So there's our iron nickel sulfide. Let's go look at the spectrum. Iron, nice nickel peak, nice iron peak. So meteorite people, this is what a nice nickel peak is going to look like. Okay, that's what we're looking for. All right, so finally we found our pentlandite. And let's see what the neighbor is. Right, this stuff right there. Maybe that. I wonder if that's going to be our pyrite. So let's see that one right there. Let's look at our analysis. And now this is another silicate. Ah, this is iron magnesium silicate. And there's aluminum. Okay. Magnesium. Okay. So that could be like chlorite or something. Like what has magnesium, aluminum, iron, and silicon? Chlorite would be a good candidate for that. And it looks a little flaky too on the surface. So if I look over here, this looks like more amphibole. There's our quartz. This would be maybe this is our magnesium aluminum silicate. Again, I'm just going by the brightness here, right? Is this pentlandite here? Let's just try this surface in here. Are we still getting pentlandite? So now this is iron sulfide. So that looks like more pyrrhotite. So it's funny, this is called pentlandite, but we've only found one indication of pentlandite.
Yeah.
All right. Well, should we go back up?
Yep.
Let's go. Let's chat about it. I want to look one thing up about galena, and then let's wrap it up.
Okay.
Okay. So we're back from the SEM, and let's talk about what we saw. So first of all, for the chalcopyrite, which is this stuff here, I did not find any indication from a 5-minute literature review that there's a significant variation in galena composition that would include copper and iron and all the other things we saw. So I think what we were seeing with those galenas, either we're getting interference from neighboring chalcopyrite, or at a microscopic scale, at a higher magnification than we could resolve today, there's little crystals of chalcopyrite living inside the galena. So something like that. So one of those things. But we definitely saw the galenas. So
yeah.
How'd you like the SEM?
That was fun. That was nice. Yeah. I really enjoyed the analysis on that. It's very visual as well, and it was just neat to be able to like choose a spot and go, that is an interesting crystal, zap a spot on it, and then get your rough chemical analysis. As we said, it was a not fully calibrated, but it still gave us a really good idea of what was going on.
Yeah, that's right. So to sum up, we've got mostly chalcopyrite, and then it has these little grains of galena. We saw some sphalerite, and we saw an iron oxide, which is, I'm going to guess, magnetite based on previous experience and based on what I think the oxygen content has to be of that rock. I don't know. It could be hematite too. Not sure, but some iron oxide, and I think we'll leave it at that. So if you want to do further literature research. And in petrology, we look at the assemblage, the equilibrium assemblage, and that's what that assemblage is: chalcopyrite, sphalerite, galena, magnetite, probably. Okay. And that could give us information on temperature of formation, redox conditions, all those kinds of things. So, but yeah, I think your boy was spot on with that. It was mostly chalcopyrite. Yeah. All right, and the other one?
The other one?
This was our pentlandite rock. Well, first of all, if we said pyrite, that was stupid because he already said pyrrhotite. I think I just had a brain fart about pyrrhotite. I think I got it confused with another mineral. But
that being said, pyrite is much more common than pyrrhotite, so we sometimes will default to the most common explanation.
And they can occur together, so it's not so weird. But still, I think we just kind of forgot in the moment that the guy said there's pyrrhotite in there. So there's pyrrhotite. We only found that one spot of pentlandite. I think there was a lot more pyrrhotite than pentlandite in that we saw anyways. Maybe we missed the spot with a lot of pentlandite. And then it was loaded with silicate materials too. So this one's the pentlandite is much more complicated. It looks like it didn't completely segregate from the silicate magma like maybe the chalcopyrite did. A little bit less segregation, but still mostly, over 90% sulfide material. So. Any last words about the sulfides?
Not really. I just want to thank you for, helping me out with pulling out the big tools to really kind of figure out what's going on. And it's opened a few more questions, and which,
Yeah.
you know, that's the part of science I really enjoy, is that you may answer questions, but you might open a few more doors.
Hmm.
So these rocks look like they really have quite a story to them. So
Yeah, and you know, the next thing to do, you know, of course, we're just doing, you know, 20 minutes of analyses
mhm.
for a YouTube video, but you know, to really dig into this and really uh, confidently identify the species in there, we need different tools. First, we need to
Wow.
quantify the compositions. Um, those silicates, you notice those were really complicated compositions. We
Yeah.
need to look those up. I didn't look those up. But that might mean we might want to make a thin section,
Okay.
even though the sulfides are going to be opaque in thin section, all those silicates won't be opaque. We'll be able to
Mhm.
identify them. We could also use a technique called reflected light or microscopy, which is really helpful for a lot of things. And then, you know, if you want to do research grade stuff, you would need probably electron microprobe analyses, which is kind of like what we just did, except it has a much more robust a way to quantify the compositions in a nice flat polished section. So, and we can still X-ray them, but see, if we did X-ray diffraction, all we would see is the major sulfides. We wouldn't see all those little tiny, what we
Mhm.
call accessory minerals. But anyways,
Yeah.
I like sulfide deposits. They're fun. They're different. They're pretty
Mhm.
and they're dense, and they're just kind of different. So,
Yeah.
all right, well,
Okay.
there we go.
All right.
All right, hope you enjoyed our scanning electron microscope adventure.
Yeah.
And I'm Dr. Abstract. This is Dylan, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah, I've seen it all. That's why they call me a professional. I know you're proud of what you got, but this rock ain't worth diddly squat. I'm not saying that you'll never be wealthy, but this preoccupation doesn't seem healthy. Don't give up your day job, you better keep it a hobby on the weekend.